All right, welcome to another episode of Profit Partners. I'm here with David Esral from EpsilonSafety. David, I only have one question to ask you, and then you can leave, okay? How are you doing?
Okay, sure. I'm doing great. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing well. You know, it's actually really funny. Every time I see you, I feel like your beard is just getting longer and longer, and my beard is getting more and more jealous.
Well, it is Sphero, it might be getting longer, but
Yeah.
I think it's reached its peak. I think
Well,
this is it.
I
But,
I hope not for my sake. So tell me, David, you do compliance and testing and a bunch of other things. And I do not understand what that means, except for when I used to work at a lab as an intern, and I would accidentally kill mice. So I'm assuming you do something entirely different from that. So can you give a brief down of what exactly your company does?
yeah, we don't kill mice for starters, but on purpose or by accident. There's really several things in the basket, but they all deal with safety compliance. Um, there are two parts to safety compliance. One is if you sell things to consumers, they need to be safe. And the other is you need to be able to show that. And that's a very important one. Um, Many people may sell things that are very safe, but you have to register them. If it's a pesticide, if it's a medical device, if it's or a dietary supplement, medicine, these things all have varying levels of registration. Cosmetics has a new registration requirement. There are label requirements, and claims. If you make a claim that this cures cancer, you can't just say that. Someone might believe you. No, but seriously, even if it does, but you can't just say it. There's a process how you show that it really does that. So a lot of people get stuck on documenting, which is proving in paperwork terms, that their stuff really is safe and meets all the requirements, even though it already is safe. But that doesn't mean everything is safe. We also have people who have problems with it actually fails. I had this really cool toy, and we had like 25 to 30 different failures on it.
Oh my
Things were,
gosh.
yeah, it was crazy, but it was also very inspiring. There were small parts. There were things that would crack into splinters. That's a sharp point. There was the long cords, which are strangulation. If you can get it around the neck, little kids aren't, they don't always understand these things. You get something around someone's neck, it could strangle them. These are legit, dangers. There were also a lot of chemical failures. The lead was a little high here. The phthalates were a little high there. It was unbelievable. And I was feeling sorry for the guy because he had a whole business. And he went back to the shop and he fixed all of them. It took him a few months, but he fixed all of them, and he makes safe products. And I felt really good about it because he was selling them before and they weren't safe. And now they're safe. So I don't know, maybe someone didn't get injured because we helped them figure out how to do it safe, or didn't die because of that. And I was really impressed with the guy that he worked so hard, but he was very determined. It was his business. And he made it into safe products. And I've had other things. A guy brings in a container load of something or half a container, and it fails. We do everything we can to help mitigate that, to make it to help it pass. A lot of times it's a labeling problem, or it's a different problem, but a label can solve it. And we'll advise them how to do that. But sometimes it just fails, and there's you need to redesign it. It just cracks into pieces, and it's small parts, and it's for a 2-year-old, and there's just not much to do. And you'd rather know that beforehand. as a business decision, you'd rather know in advance that your stuff is no good. You can redesign it and make it right, and everything's fine. Or you can be stuck with a container of something that you can't sell, or maybe the customs confiscates it from you. And then you have to pay them warehousing costs, destruction costs, and now you're on like the no fly list, or whatever it is for products, whatever they call it. But you get extra scrutiny when your stuff comes in, because they remember that guy, he's the guy with whatever, his labels were bad, so we got to double check him. But a lot of people do not plan in advance, and as much as I don't recommend that, but they do that, and people come to me like that also, and we're often able to help them. Sometimes before their listing gets pulled, sometimes they don't have enough warning for that, and but we are able to help a lot of people. Now there are things that people ask me a lot of times. Okay, I know it meets the government regulation, but does it meet Amazon's regulation? And people are in awe of Amazon, because Amazon can be so arbitrary in anything they do, and just we don't like something, we're not going to tell you what it is, so we're going to hold all your money for 90 days or for indefinitely. So they're just like, everyone's frightened out of their minds from them. For the most part, Amazon regulations are the government regulations of whatever country you're selling it in. And 90% of the time, when it's a little bit different, Amazon doesn't know that. They think it's the same. But they're just, I don't know, sometimes they're not so good at this. And sometimes they're extra strict, and sometimes they're extra lenient. And, I've never felt a responsibility to get anyone in trouble when when someone misses something. But I keep track of all these things. Typically Amazon doesn't care about this, even though they should. And I won't say what those things are, but because then it won't work anymore. But typically there's certain things they're extra strict on, and you can't talk them out of it. They're very sure of themselves, and they're wrong. But a lot of times they are right. You didn't get your paperwork done, and you need to have the paperwork, and and those, we just have to get it done for you. That's that's all that's what has to happen. So all these different things happen. I just saw someone posted today on LinkedIn that he totally different field, but he just said that there's certain things he did because of the nature of his business, and he became really good at that because his business was a low margin business, low margin, high volume. So you're making shavings. So if you do everything perfect, you could do really well. But if you don't, you could lose a fortune. If you can't keep your costs. So he became excellent at keeping his costs up to the nubs, to the minimum, and that's a good thing to do in any business. But his situation forced him to do it. And now he could go into any business, and he has his own business, and I was thinking, I don't have anybody who's my spy at Amazon who just fixes things for me. And those things are very tempting, but they're also, I think illegal. But but I've never had such a person, and I don't really look for such a person because I like it out of jail. But I had to just figure out when Amazon does things a little differently, or nobody knows why they're doing it. So I study them, and I read a book many years ago by Temple Grandin, and she became famous for Shrita. She's not Jewish. She designs equipment for handling cattle and livestock. And she said she gets inside the cow's head or the sheep's head. And she says, if I were here, what would I be thinking? And I was a cow, with the way a cow thinks about things, and from the vantage point, the physical vantage point. And she solved so many problems in handling equipment, that they cows panicked when this happened, because and nobody knew why. And she got in their head, and she was able to. So I nothing against Amazon safety team, but I get in their head, and I'm like, if I were you guys and I looked at this, and I think I assume they're well-meaning, and some are better trained than others, but not all. No, best would be if they worked in a lab for 10 years, but I don't think that's what they do. So if I were that guy and I looked at this, what would bother me about it? And that's what I keep asking myself. And so that disadvantage that I'm always working with people who never say what they mean. I learned how to figure out what they mean. They don't need to tell me what they mean. I read it, I look at it, and I was like, oh yeah. And I keep track of all this stuff. So there are things that keep repeating themselves. Like, yeah, they always mess that one up. And here's what you do, this and this, and it's not right. You shouldn't have to do this, but it's not so hard to do it. So let's just do this, and you're good. And it keeps working. And, and that's, so I try to take that disadvantage and make it into an advantage.
So let me ask you this. So there are compliance and there are regulations.
Yeah.
What exactly is the difference? Is it that the regulations form the compliance, or that you have to do compliance in order to go along with the regulations, or is it something? Are they two completely different things?
Well, compliance is has a different meaning within Amazon, and so I always say safety compliance. Compliance can mean, in Amazon speak, can mean that you have receipts showing that you bought it from the from an authorized reseller, or directly from the company, and that has nothing to do with safety. That just means they're not stolen, or they're not copycats, or whatever. And they have a whole lot of other things that they call compliance. And why they would freeze your funds or not freeze your funds, or whatever, all the things they do to people. And so, but outside of Amazon, compliance just means following the rules. So in regulation, the regulations often require, depending on the product, a certain amount of testing to show that it meets certain regulations. But there are other things like the factory in some product lines. The factory needs to have a system how they make everything. If I sell toys, I can somehow or another, I end up with this toy. We make 100,000 of them a year. My toy passed all the testing, and it's good. And I have all the paperwork to show that it passed. Nobody has to go into the factory and say, do you guys make it the same every time? We certainly hope that, and we certainly assume that. But it could be each one is made miraculously, and one has nothing to do with the next. It's supposed to be a representative sample, but there's nothing done to show that they're all made out of this. Every time we buy the same materials, we make it on the same machines, and because if you don't do that, this one works fine, and this other one, when you sneeze, it just disintegrates. And so depending on the product, if you sell medicine, it's a much bigger deal if you mess up. So there's a regulations called GMP, and the factory that makes the medicine has to have a whole system. We always make it this way, and so it has to be written up to make it that way, and then they have to keep records. They have to keep records and should be able to show them that we checked every every run, and this was the ingredients going in. These were the guys working there, and they're all trained to do it. This is how packaging. Sometimes you have to keep track of temperature or humidity or all kinds of stuff, and they have records to show everything. And if you get audits, sometimes from the government, sometimes from third parties, and sometimes they're surprise audits, and it better be good. We had it in the United States a few years ago, not too long ago. Baby formula. Suddenly, one of the major brands. Until that point, it was the only brand I even knew about, but it was certainly a major brand. Suddenly, was pulled from all the shelves. They found, I don't know, some bacteria, something was in it, unsafe. They had messed up. Something went wrong with their quality system, and then you understand why you have a quality system. And it's not separate from how you run the business. It is integrally how you run the business, and it would cost the money. It cost the company tons of money. I'm sure they had to pay fines, a lot of lost business, a lot of recalled product. Their brands was, image was damaged. All these things happen. So when you make medicine, if you're a few milligrams off, it can make a really big difference. But that applies to medical devices. It will apply to cosmetics. It applies to dietary supplements. And it's not testing. It just means I make it. I have a consistent system, and it's a good system how to make it every time. And so that's part of compliance, even though it's not testing. And then there's also labeling. There could be extensive labeling requirements, and that could be the difference between pass and fail. Definitely is. It can be the difference between the government confiscates your container or not. I point out to my daughters that the strollers, they have all these fancy strollers, and there's like whole essays of warning symbols, warning labels on the. It's sort of ugly, but it's everyone has it, so it's not ugly. But they're all they cover the stroller, and I said, "Did you ever read them?" And they said, "No." like who would read that? I was like, they're there for a reason.
This guy does. I do every single time.
I advise at least read it once. When you get on a plane and they tell you what to do if it crashes, like once in a while you should pay attention every time, but certainly once in a while, look where the exits are. You're not going to be able to look when you need to look. So but there are people who just don't look at them. But that's the guy who's making it, he can't be that person, because maybe every one of his customers doesn't look at his labels, but he better look at his labels, and because it can cost him dearly. Even if you get through customs and you get through Amazon, theoretically your customer might know something and might turn you in too. If the Consumer Product Safety Commission sees, and they do test buys also online now. If they, I had not seen that, and then 6-9 months ago, one of my customers came to me and he said, he got caught. He also had let his testing lag. All his testing had expired, and and something changed in the process. Like, remember I said you're supposed to do it the same every time. Well, over time things happen, and since I don't know what happened, but something happened, and his stuff no longer passed, and he didn't find it because he didn't do the testing, but the Consumer Product Safety Commission combined with customs found it, and suddenly he was in serious hot water, and could have been easily solved if we had if we had known about it. It's solved now, but so that's but they didn't they didn't catch it at customs. They bought some online, with random names. I mean, you don't know I don't think you can control it anyway, but you don't know who's buying from you. And they were the CPSC, and they tested it. I guess they bought like 10 of them, probably all separate purchases. And they did 10 of them, and like 7 of them failed. And he got a really mean, nasty letter from them. And, his life was different for the next 6 months. So you need to get the labels right. And I think labeling might have helped him. He did redesign ultimately, but he might have, if he'd have done. We tried to change the labels afterwards, but they wouldn't let. And but if he had caught that in advance, we would have done whatever we had to do. He could have fixed the label or redesigned as he ultimately did. But that's another place where people can get in big trouble, even though they got past everyone, is in California, and this is really important.
Yeah.
Proposition 65 is a sort of scary. The way the regulation's written it's scary. There's over 800 chemicals that are considered dangerous in California. And to be honest, I'm a chemist. Probably 95% of them truly are dangerous. They cause cancer, they cause reproductive problems. And there are a few you could probably argue, is the data really good? And I've looked at some of these things, but it doesn't really matter. The rules are the rules. So Customs isn't checking for it. Amazon usually doesn't say anything about it. But anyone in California, unlike other regulations, anyone in California, I think you have to be a resident, but there are plenty, and who buys it online and it's delivered to him in California, or he buys it in a store in California, he can test it, find that you failed something, and sue you. And he gets to splits the proceeds with the attorney general. Then join the suit, and provide all the lawyers for the lawsuit, and then he gets a significant cut of the usually five figure settlement. So whatever, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 settlement. Had to hire a lawyer to fight it in general, and you can get away with it for a really long time, but all that money you saved, you lose in like 3 minutes, and you really can't sleep for a long time. Also, it's really not worth it. The problem is figuring out, what do I test for? Because it's 800 chemicals. You can't test them all the same way. They're different tests for different chemicals. So, the lab or somebody like me can usually advise you, well, these are the most reasonable things that might be there. So if it's metal jewelry or something like that, so you test for lead and cadmium. If it's plastic, if it's paint, you test for lead and phthalates. If it's fabric, you test for certain flame retardants. That you can't test. If you're selling fish, test it for mercury. Those are the things that typically show up in those materials. And then there's an endless amount of materials, and it's a you feel real good about it till you don't. And but it's worth worrying about. I've had people test in advance and they're fine. I've had people, after they got caught, they got tests. I've had lawyers reach out to us and they say, listen, can you test this? We don't know how to respond. We don't know if it's true or not. The guy claims such and such is in it. And, maybe they're wrong. It could happen. Or maybe they're right. Already he's hiring a lawyer. At that point, he hired a lawyer already. And then he's paying for the testing. And the lawyer probably adds a fee for arranging the test. And, and a lot of times they were right. It really failed. I've had where someone made a mistake and it really passed. I heard a really cool idea. One of my customers said to me, I was like, you should really test. He had like 6 or 7 materials on his product. I said, you should really test it for Prop 65. I said, but I need you to send me like 8 more of them, that we should have enough of it to test. And he said to me, if you need 8 to test, then the guy who would catch me is also going to need 8 to test. He's probably not going to do it. And I was like, not bad, guys. He's thinking on his feet. And whether that's a great idea or not, it was a multi-billion-dollar company. I don't know, but that's what they did, and it probably works, because it does cost the guy who sues you money. He has to pay for all that lab testing. For the guys who are good at it, though, it is a very workable, very lucrative business model. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know if it's morally good. I'm not commenting on that, but I'm just saying it works. Guys make a lot of money doing that, but they probably know who to, when it's worthwhile to test and when it's not. And they probably do agree with this guy. Like, I'm not buying 8 of them just to get enough for a sample. So all these things are compliance, and even safety compliance are not all testing, though. And there's different, and they're different, depends on your product line. It depends on what exactly, who's regulating you, what you need to do. Also, different countries are different. There's a lot of overlap because, people don't choke differently in America than in Canada or Europe, but still the way the regulations are written, they're slightly different. But a lot of times I'll tell people, if you're going to sell it in Europe, you might it makes sense to test everything at once. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't matter. You're totally starting from the beginning. But a lot of times there's a lot of overlap, and that goes for all different kinds of regulations. They tend to notice the same things. And advise. They tend to find the same things unsafe in all these places, and the regulations reflect that. They all talk to each other. Also, all the different government regulators, they sit on each other's committees or as observers, just to see what these guys are talking about. Maybe we should do that too. Some new things going on. I just thought I should mention that. There's magnet regulations. So there always were magnet regulations for toys. The concept is that if you would swallow several magnets, particularly at separate times, let's say every 20 minutes, so they would be going through your intestines at different spots. They're magnets, so they could suddenly connect to each other and create a blockage, and that could be dangerous or even fatal. There's another new regulation. I mean, these are newish. They've been coming at us for 2-3 years, but till they organize the regulation and what it is, until they pass it, till it goes into effect. But these are there now. There's another one with button batteries, little batteries like in a watch, that are about the size of a button. So all batteries are full of horrible chemicals. Horrible as far as poisonous and dangerous. I mean, they make the world go round, but you should never eat them, of course, or throw them in landfills or in the garbage can. But the tiny ones, kids have eaten them. I think the first case was a young child, like an infant in Australia, but someone in America did it also. And so they, I think it's called Reese's Law. But so those are also, so the regulations, the batteries, you can sell the batteries, but the packaging has to be childproof, similar to childproof rules of medicine. There's labeling requirements, warning people. And then if it's in a toy, so the battery compartment has to be sealed tight. It shouldn't be, and this all makes sense. Now, most bureaucracy, everything can make sense, but certain applications are a little like, oh, come on. But hey, that's the way it is. These are new regulations, and a lot of companies are scrambling to meet them because because when they made the stuff, nobody was thinking about this stuff. So those are two new ones. If you sell in Europe, a new one is a lot of recycling labeling.
Yeah.
And there's two ends to that. There's the Tri-Man logo and the green dot and all the hieroglyphics that go with that, which effectively tell people, throw cardboard in the cardboard recycling bin, throw plastic in the plastic recycling bin. I mean, you would think people could figure that out. That's not the reason they're not doing it. It's because they just don't feel like it. But anyway, they require all that, and these are things also that you can get in serious trouble for. And in Europe, a lot of different countries, it's still developing. A lot of different countries have different regulations because their recycling laws are different. And it can get to a point at some point where you have to have different packaging for France and Germany because you've like there's so much stuff there. And they don't want you to have the French stuff in Germany because it's not true there. It's only true in France. There's also EPR, which is you have to pay a certain amount of money officially to help in Europe to help pay for the landfilling costs or waste management costs of your packaging. Different. These are new kinds of things, and of course, cosmetics. That's the biggest one. The FDA in the United States has a new regulation called MoCRA, MoCRA. Over a year, it's a several year rollout, but it rolled out already, but they're first going to be enforcing it July 1st. Now they're expecting you to do it, so you'll be ready for July 1st. Will Amazon enforce it? Also, we'll find out, but likely in a Amazon kind of sometimes yes, sometimes no kind of way, but still they'll be doing it, and the FDA will can be enforcing it. FDA has been doing test buys for a year, or I don't know the official term. They buy stuff and punish people. So but the regulation for cosmetics right now is just that you register each factory that manufactures for you, and you register every product you make there, and let them know if there's a significant event, which someone complains about. Certainly if somebody dies or gets seriously ill, you have to keep records about rashes and stuff like that. When you have to tell them, or if you have to tell them, is this, the different. It depends on the seriousness of it, but that's the first step. And down the road, you're going to need this GMP. We talked about a quality system for a factory, because the cosmetics should be made consistent. If we're testing it and we're going to say, well, for the next year, it's all good. Well, we want you to make it this. So cosmetics is more dangerous, I guess they feel, than toys, because you put it all over yourself and it goes through your pores. And but right now there is no GMP regulation. There's going to be requirements to test it for different things. Right now there aren't really firm requirements. There's suggested testing, but there's no firm requirements. And so, but this is a new thing, and anyone selling cosmetics, can contact me. I'll give you more detail. But it's a regulation that's coming, and it's pretty easy to comply. But if you don't, it could be really, really traumatic. The government's not so nice anymore about, oh, I didn't know. They don't really go for that anymore. They did that for many years, but it's much harder to argue that. And there are people who truly don't know.